Welcome to Anticipating Christ's Return YouTube channel, a place where we can gather together and joyfully anticipate the return of our Lord. I hope you enjoy.
Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Caitlin. Today I want to share with you this quote, this article. It's from the Journal of Discourses by George Q. Cannon. I have studied this. It is 4 pages, 3.5 pages. And as you can tell, I used to have teachers say it doesn't count if you highlight the whole thing. And that's kind of how I like to highlight things. But I highlight them in different colors that make sense to my mind. But this whole thing is highlighted because this whole thing is needful for me and for us. I have made some videos recently that have sparked a lot of discussion, I guess you could say. And it's always something uncomfortable, right? Changing your perception is uncomfortable. And it's uncomfortable for me. It's uncomfortable for you. If it's not uncomfortable for you, then I don't know. It's uncomfortable. It just is. The purpose in me sharing these possible fulfillments of prophecy is not to show that I am correct. It is to show that things could happen naturally or differently than we sometimes expect. So I'm going to dive into this article and I'm going to let George Q. Cannon, who is an apostle, speak. Now, hopefully this doesn't bore you. And I don't think I'm going to read the whole thing, but this is very, very, very important. And I want this article to do the talking because a lot of times people push back against me and anyway, I am just reading now at this point. Okay. Again, like I said, I'm kind of going to jump around. But it says, the Latter-day Saints are in many respects like other people who are not Latter-day Saints. We are apt to entertain views which are not very correct, and which may be the result of our traditions and preconceived ideas. This is a peculiarity that pertains to mankind generally, that whenever they deal with the things of God or speak about them or contemplate them, and especially when they read the predictions made by the servants of God concerning future events or the events that may transpire right before their eyes, they are apt to get, sometimes, erroneous ideas, or at least exaggerated ideas in relation to them. The prophets have foretold the events that should take place in connection with this work. There is one prophecy that comes to mind, recorded by Isaiah and Micah, respecting the building of the house of God in the top of the mountains, and gathering of the people there, and the object for which they should gather, that they should come up and be taught of the Lord. Now, it might be supposed that when that prediction would be fulfilled, it would be so prominent and so remarkable in the midst of the nations of the earth, that all the inhabitants thereof should witness it would say, quote, "This is the fulfillment of the prediction of Isaiah and Micah," end quote. And it might be thought that all the inhabitants of the earth who witnessed it would be convinced of the truth of it and would say, quote, "We have no further opposition to this work because we behold the fulfillment of the predictions of the holy prophets whom we have been taught to regard and whose writings we have read as authority from God." And doubtless, there are many Latter-day Saints who have thought in the early days of their experience in this church, when they have heard the elders predict concerning the events that should take place in connection with this work, they have thought and felt in their heart that when the wicked and those who oppose this work should see the fulfillment of these predictions, they would be constrained to acknowledge that this is the work of God, and would cease from hostility and opposition, and would say that they have been mistaken. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second here. We know, I hope we know, that the fulfillment of Isaiah 2:2, when they should gather to the tops of the mountains, this is the temple. In fact, there is a statue. Statue is the wrong word. There's like a granite slab in front of the Salt Lake City temple. It's been there, but it's anyway. This fulfillment was with the Salt Lake City temple and other temples, because the nations are going to the temples. Okay, Isaiah. A lot of the world does not accept that as fulfilled prophecy. A lot of them don't. I've heard people within the church say that they don't see that as fulfilled prophecy. What are we doing? If prophets are declaring that this is fulfilled prophecy, but it doesn't look like you think it should look, okay. But it wasn't a literal mountain. You guys. The temple, the house of the Lord, is also called the mountains of the Lord. I made a video about this one time where I said whenever it talks about the mountain going up to a mount or going up to a mountain, that is temple imagery. And someone said, I mean, it's kind of just ridiculous. And I know that I should put like references to what I say, but they're like, give me proof. And I'm like, you could actually go and study that for yourself. You could do like a quick Google search and find that that is the case. But I mean, how do I give you proof of years and years of study and the Spirit testifying? I mean, to some extent, it's like give you the proof. Okay, go and study, go and pray, go and receive the Spirit to allow you to know that going up to a mount is like going to the house of the Lord. And listen to prophets because they're saying it. Okay, I'm going to keep reading. I'm going to scroll down. Okay. Now I allude to that in connection with this subject to show you that not only is the world mistaken in its views. Don't worry, I will link the full text of this if you guys want to study this. I'm not trying to like gatekeep this. It's kind of like a hard quote to find. So yeah, don't worry, I'll link it. Okay, sorry, let me start again. Now, I allude to that in connection with this subject to show you that not only is the world mistaken in its views respecting the fulfillment of predictions of the prophets, but even Latter-day Saints have doubtless, in many instances, entertained erroneous views respecting the fulfillment of revelation and prophecies of the Bible. Now, I could pull up comment after comment and direct message after direct message of people sending me really, really rude messages of how I don't have the authority. And yet I wasn't necessarily proclaiming fulfillment of prophecy. However, I do want to show you, is now the time to show? Yeah, I might as well show you. In President, I'm not going to pull it up. I have a screenshot of it. It would anyway. In Elder Razban's talk from April 2025, it is titled "Right Before Our Eyes." He says, and I want you guys to think about this in regards to, can we see prophecy fulfilled even if the prophets don't declare it fulfilled? What is the point of prophecy? I mean, really, I want you guys to think about this. I'm not going to necessarily give you the answer. I mean, maybe I'll give you what I think the answer is, but I want you guys to think about it. Why do we have the signs of the times? What is prophecy? why did Jesus Christ give signs of his coming? And why do they seem to relate to us? Because he wants us to be prepared for when that day comes that we meet him, whether it is in death or at his second coming. It doesn't necessarily matter if Jesus Christ comes at his second coming in our lifetime. Now, I know that people might get upset by that because my whole channel is about anticipating Christ's return. I am not as attached to a date of his coming or to the actual coming himself, as long as I know that I am prepared for it. But why are we given signs? Why are we given prophecies? And why did Jesus Christ himself tell us to watch? So that we could be ready. Now, listen to this quote from Elder Rasband of April this year. Again, this is titled right before my eyes. He says, I marvel at what President Nelson calls the majesty of this moment and express profound gratitude for the Lord for his work. Listen, I encourage us to stand tall as his disciples, eyewitnesses of the fulfillment of prophecy, both ancient and modern. Now, this answer came to me. I prayed last night. I was receiving comments that were really getting me down, like to the point where I was like, why do I even do this? And not that I want this to become like a pity party where people are like, no, keep going, like blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm grateful for those messages, but I was like, why do I do this? Why do I even take the time to try to help people understand a different perspective when all I get is that I'm a heretic, I'm speaking blasphemy? How dare you consider yourself a prophetess to declare prophecy fulfilled? And yet Elder Rasband himself says, I encourage us to stand tall as disciples, eyewitnesses of the fulfillment of prophecy, both ancient and modern. Now, never once, if you listen to me, now if you only look at my thumbnails and then judge me off of my thumbnails, so be it. That's your problem. But I have never once claimed to have divine inspiration besides myself or for my family. I've never once claimed fulfillment of scripture. Okay, the problem with the world that we live in and YouTube and social media is that, yeah, you have to be exciting. You have to market your stuff. I'm sorry. But we can stand tall as eyewitnesses that we are living in the fulfillment of prophecy. Now, it leads me to another question of, does prophecy have to be declared fulfilled for it to be fulfilled? Does it have to? It's interesting, right? Joseph Smith, when he saw God the Father, when he received the gold plates, when Angel Moroni came to him, he didn't say, oh, today prophecy has been fulfilled. No, he was living in revelation. He was living a day at a time, like, oh, okay, I'm understanding this. To him, it was a very natural, maybe not natural, right? It's not always natural to see God the Father and Jesus Christ. But he wasn't like, oh, this is prophecy, you know? And yet, don't we all see things every single day of our lives that we're like, that could fulfill prophecy? And what is that supposed to do? We don't declare it because we want to be right. We point it out because we want to prepare people for the second coming of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Right? That's why we were given signs of the times, so that we could watch and be ready. Okay, sorry. I'll keep reading, okay? So it says, respecting the fulfillment of revelation and the prophecies of the Bible, I have no doubt that there are many here tonight who have had some experience in this and can look back at times in their lives when they have thought Surely. Now, sometimes when I point out cool things, like with the President Holland thing, with things that he has said, I think to myself, surely this. When these things which the prophets have foretold, or when I show them this piece of evidence, everyone will believe what I think. Or not that what I think, but like what I am feeling, what I think could be significant of this. So he says, surely when these things which the prophets have foretold are brought to pass, the people will be convinced. My friends who now ridicule me will be then convinced, and they will be forced to confess that I did the right thing in embracing the gospel. So what he's saying is like, people think that it's going to be obvious to people. Just like I thought, using President Holland's words of the importance of us being in Jerusalem cannot be overstated. Like, okay, what would be an overstatement? Well, probably Caitlin getting on her YouTube channel and saying that these prophets went to Jerusalem. So could they be part of this fulfillment of prophecy? Now that would be an overstatement, wouldn't it? But yet Elder Holland is saying the importance of this, the significance of this could not be overstated. And yet still people are like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Go back and read the scriptures. Don't you know that there's not armies surrounding Jerusalem? Actually, there are. Is it the literal number 200 million or whatever? It's like, come on, you guys. Do you know how small Jerusalem is? 200 million? Okay. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, okay. I'm obviously sassy today. I'm sassy. Okay. Let's read. No doubt there are some in this audience tonight who have had these ideas, and certainly there are good reasons for entertaining them, but experience has taught us that while there may be a few, when they have seen the predictions fulfilled, have acknowledged that our course is right, in the majority of cases throughout the earth where the gospel has been preached, the fulfillment of predictions of the prophets has not had the effect to convince people of the truth of the ministry that God has given to us. Because it doesn't happen the way people expect it to happen. All right, so let me continue. It's getting good here. You can tell by my underlining. Even with this experience in the past, the Latter-day Saints themselves are not entirely divested of extravagant views respecting the effects which are likely to follow the fulfillment of predictions yet in the future. Okay, so he's calling out that people have these extravagant, these cinematic views of what prophecy should look like. Just a second. I don't want this to... Are we not all inclined to look forward to many events which have been predicted by the servants of God as being so great and wonderful, and I may say so supernatural in character, that when they shall be fulfilled, they will even startle us, who believe they are coming, and will compel the unbelieving inhabitants of the earth to accept them as evidences of truth? In our thoughts, this seems to be the natural tendency. I've seen this with people's comments. I notice it in myself, he says, and I notice it in others. When we read respecting the great events which are to take place in connection with this world as predicted in the book of Doctrine and Covenants, are we not inclined to think that surely when these things shall come to pass, all the earth, as well as ourselves, will be constrained to acknowledge this to be the work of God? And these events are to be indeed those which have been predicted by the prophets? Now, I would not for the world say one word to lessen in the minds of my brothers and sisters the importance of these events. They are important. I'm not diminishing the prophecies either. And he wants to say the same thing, but listen what he says. I would not say one word to weaken your proper expectations, but My experience has taught me that the Lord works in the midst of this people by natural means, and that the greatest events that have been spoken of by the prophets will come along so naturally as the consequence of certain causes that unless our eyes are enlightened by the Spirit of God, the Spirit of revelation rests us. We will fail to see these are the events predicted by the holy prophets. What do you say about that? The Lord works through natural means, and the greatest events will come along so naturally that unless your eyes are enlightened by the Spirit, you will fail to see what events or these events and that they have been predicted by the prophets. I see this when I make videos thinking naturally, because President Holland said this, people are going to take him at his word. We have a prophet of God, a Moses. Now, going back to what I said at the beginning, in fact, in the case that people thought I wasn't getting to my point, maybe this was actually in a different video, but people will often say, if I lived in the days of Moses, I wouldn't have stoned him. I would have believed him. And yet we have prophets today saying, I pray that you will not miss the majesty of the moment. The Lord is indeed hastening his work. We are eyewitnesses to the fulfillment of prophecy, both ancient and modern. Do we have the eyes to see that these prophecies are happening? He says that unless our eyes are enlightened by the Spirit of God and the Spirit of revelation rests on us, we will fail to see that these things are the events predicted by holy prophets. He didn't say, unless we listen to the prophets when they declare fulfillment of prophecy. No. Because don't you guys remember, it's only because we live 200 years after Joseph Smith that we can say that was a fulfillment of prophecy. Oh yeah, the gold plates coming out from the dust, fulfillment of prophecy. He wasn't like, I just pulled these out of the earth, the dust. That was an angel came unto me declaring these things. That must be the angel in Revelation. No, even today, people in the church are like, oh no, Moroni wasn't the fulfillment of that. It's like, okay. Like, at some point, I just have to like throw up my hands and be like, most people that watch my channel probably are like, yeah, this makes sense. Of course, there's going to be the noisy ones, whatever. Anyway, okay. Let's listen to this. You take two persons, one who has the Spirit of God, whose mind is enlightened by that Spirit, the Spirit of revelation, that same Spirit that rested upon the prophets who wrote the revelations and the prophecies we have. You take a man of that kind, and then you take another who has none of the Spirit, and you put the two together, and one man's eyes will be open to see the hand of God in all of these events. He will notice his movements and his providence in everything connected with his work. And they will be testimonies to him to strengthen faith and to furnish his mind with continual reasons for giving thanks to God and worshiping God. Now, when I read that, and when I read it today and the other day when I was studying this, I thought, okay, that'll be my testimony. Because the Spirit has rested upon me that a lot of things which the prophets say are true. Who am I to say that they're not? You know, it's always really interesting. There are certain people on this YouTube thing who are actually the opposite of me. And they're like, oh no, that wasn't fulfillment. Oh, the prophet said it was fulfilled. That's not what he meant. It's like, oh, really? When President Hinckley said that the prophecy of Joel was fulfilled, and and then people have the audacity to be like, no, it wasn't. Yes, I sustained prophets, but no, it wasn't. Okay. I don't want to be on that side. I don't want to do that. Okay. Okay, on the other hand, the man who has not, okay, I'll pause and then okay, sorry. Okay, now he says, on the other hand, while the man who has not the Spirit of God will see nothing godlike in the occurrences, nothing which he will view as supernatural, as many suppose everything which exhibits God's power to be, or nothing which he will accept as fulfillment of prophecies. His eyes will be closed, his heart will be hardened, and to all the evidences of the divinity of these things, he will be impenetrable. The reason I read this to you is because I think we are at risk of missing the majesty of this moment. There is a reason why our prophet has prayed for us to not miss the majesty, not miss the days that we are living in. We are living in the latter part of the latter days. I don't know like how else I can say this. It's so important to me. I don't know why. I don't know why I feel this sense of like responsibility. Like, this isn't my responsibility to make sure that everyone on YouTube knows that Jesus Christ is coming. And yet here I am, a mom with kids knocking on my door. And I'm like, but wait, I have to tell them. I have to tell them that Jesus Christ is coming. And I have to point out, and it's uncomfortable for me because I know that this video, like I might need to turn off the comments of this video because people might be like, no. I mean, really, they'll say more than that. But like, it might be hard to hear. And remember, it's not my words, it's George Q. Cannon's words, so get mad at him. Get mad at a prophet of God for telling you this. But you either see God working in everything, which people get annoyed. I've had comments being like, not everything is prophecy. Actually, when your mind is enlightened by the Spirit, he says that. Whose mind is enlightened by the Spirit, one man's eyes will be open to see the hand of God in all these events, and he will notice his movements and his providence in everything connected to his work, and everything will testify. Wouldn't you rather be the person who sees God's hand in everything than the person who's like, yeah, no, I'm going to reject the two prophets that went to Jerusalem and testified because they weren't there for 3.5 years. I'm going to reject the fact that we had prophets standing on the soil, the same soil that Jesus Christ himself stood at. Peter stood on. Paul, yep. Why? Because it doesn't look the way I think it will. And then when I explain, actually, do you know what John in Revelation would have meant when he says 3.5 years? Do you know that? Oh, well, I don't look at numerology. Numerology's of the devil. Oh, okay. I mean, it's biblical. He would have wrote it knowing the meaning of 3.5. So do you want to know? Nope, I don't. It's 3.5 years. Start the clock when two prophets or two people or two missionaries or two whatever When they go to Jerusalem, oh yeah, then I'm going to start my clock. 3.5 years, go. You guys, 3.5 is just half of 7, which is complete. You know how God created the world in 7 days? It was a complete creation. You know how the millennium is the 7th day and the earth will rest? It's going to be complete after the 7,000 years. The earth's existence. Complete. 7. Half of 7 is 3.5. What does that mean? Incomplete. I mean, really, okay, or a time. Now, this is perhaps maybe what John would have wanted us to know when we read the word 3.5. A period of time, incomplete, that God would allow Satan to rule. So when it says, oh, 2 prophets are going to go to Jerusalem and preach for 3.5 years, the work might not be complete in our minds or in the world. Now, it's so interesting because everyone's like, no, the gospel has to be preached to every person. Really? I mean, I ask yourself, really, because if that's the case, like, that's a very long time. But the millennium, we still have 1,000 years in the millennium. Okay. Going back to 3.5 though, is this incomplete time where prophets are testifying in wickedness, where it seems like Satan is prevailing. Now, go back to this. Well, you're seeing what you want. You're resting the scriptures. Got that comment too. Oh, I'm resting the scriptures. Okay. Well, a prophet of God said, you take 2 persons, one that has the Spirit of God, whose mind is enlightened, and that person will see God's hand in everything. He'll notice when things are being fulfilled, even if it's not said, oh, today this is fulfilled. Not that I can notice things and I can point them out and say, did you guys know that Elder Holland said that the significance of President Nelson and President Holland being in Jerusalem, the significance of that can't be overstated? Now, I'm pointing your mind to that because the Spirit pointed it to me. Now, I can't force you to believe anything about that. Just like people's hearts will be so hardened, their eyes will be closed that they won't accept anything as fulfillment unless someone tells them, hey, this was fulfilled. And then even then it's like, well, what President Hinckley meant to say was this. Like it's okay. Okay. I'll get off my high horse. I'll get off of it. Okay. To those who have mingled with the world, the reasons for this are very plain. Men do not believe in these days in the direct interposition of God in the affairs of men. If they even believe in God, they believe that he governs the universe by the great natural laws. When therefore a great and wonderful event does occur, they seek for its origin and explanation in some natural law. I have actually seen this with President Holland, again, different event, when he said, he testifies that prayers and the priesthood has restored his health. And I have seen people write this off. Well, modern medicine. Him coming back from basically the dead, he said the edge of death. He said that in this October General Conference, right before he says that he is a witness. He came back from the edge of death, and yet people are like, nope, because I'm going to explain it by some natural law, modern medicine. Yeah, everyone comes back from the death. You could be in a coma and then come back, be just fine. It's so, we can explain away so many things that we don't see anything unless your eyes are enlightened by the Spirit. They ignore the fact that God works through natural laws, but seem to think that if he were to interpose at all, it would be by manifesting his power through the suspension of natural laws, by overriding and violating them in such a supernatural manner that mankind would be compelled to acknowledge that it was his act, as they would be utterly unable to account for it by any laws known to them, or in any other ways that as being through his power. My reason for calling your attention to the word of the Lord I have read to you is that if I have sometimes thought that our people do not appreciate as they should the spirit of revelation, the spirit of prophecy, and the power of God that has been poured out on this people, the facts seem to be overlooked that it was in the manner of which the Lord tells Oliver Cowdery that Moses brought the children of Israel through the Red Sea on dry ground. The Lord said to Oliver, I will tell you in your mind and in your heart by the Holy Ghost, which shall come upon you and which shall dwell in your heart. Now behold, this is the spirit of revelation. Behold, this is the spirit by which Moses brought the children through the Red Sea on dry ground. How many of the Latter-day Saints are there who understand that this is the way in which Moses led the children out of Israel so miraculously? How many are there who think that if we had a man like Moses among us, the people would be led differently and with greater manifestations of power than they are? How many are there? Okay, just a second. Sorry. Sorry. I'm like, hold on. Let me finish my thought. Okay. How many of these are dissatisfied with what God is doing at present and are looking for someone to appear in the future who shall exhibit, you guys, listen, who shall exhibit convincing and overwhelming manifestations of power? Now, it's really interesting. There is this false notion right now going around about the Davidic servant. I'm covering every topic today in this video. Sorry, it's going to be 40 minutes long or longer. Listen, we have been warned, and I'm going to finish this thought at this comment. The Davidic servant, the one mighty and strong, it is Jesus Christ. People are going to be like, no. It's going to be a presiding bishop because of this. It's going to be this, that. No. Okay, I'm going to read this quote again. How many? I think this idea, I think this idea comes from a different Restoration church about the one mighty and strong. Someone who is going to come and set straight and gather in all the Restoration churches. I think this comes from a different part of Mormonism. And I say Mormonism because outside, sometimes I get comments of like, oh, the Mormon YouTubers, like as Mormons. And it's like, okay, you're distinguishing yourself because there are still people who aren't led by a prophet of God who consider themselves Mormon. I don't know if you guys know this, but it's true. I want to say that this is, and if you know more about this, please comment, but I think there are other branches of Restoration churches who think that there is going to be one who is going to have power. And apparently he knew about it too, because he sets it straight. So please, the Davidic servant is not a thing. It's not a thing. Jesus Christ came from the lineage of David. That's what it is. This bishop, this presiding bishop over the church. I know that Jared over on Christian Homestead has talked about this. Go watch his video because I'm not going to. Okay, I'm going to finish the quote. I'm not going to finish. He's talked about it. Okay. How many are there who are dissatisfied with what God is doing at present? There's a lot, by the way. And are looking for someone to appear in the future who shall exhibit convincing and overwhelming manifestations of power. Just so you know, people who are dissatisfied with the first presidency watch my channel and they leave comments. They leave comments that could deceive. I don't think they mean to do it. I don't know what their intentions are, and I don't want to pretend I know their intentions. But when people who call us Brighamites, or when people who oppose our prophets and apostles, a lot of them are watching because they're from these other restoration churches, and they don't have. They're watching too. They want the fulfillment of prophecies as well. Anyway, but they are dissatisfied by the prophets and apostles. He says, how many of there at this present time who are neglecting the precious and inestimable gift of revelation which God has bestowed upon his people, because it does not come to them in a way that suits their preconceived notions and ideas, or who are not suited with the way that the church has been led. Right? There's been many people who, even within the church, who are fighting against, oh, well, Brigham Young was a terrible prophet. I have seen these comments within the church. Eventually, the church is like, oh, hey, you can't do this if you're going to be a member of the church. And then people get mad, but it's true because it deceives. God has called his prophets and apostles to lead the church. If you don't believe that, that's the first step to apostasy. Okay. I know that I'm talking to like a majority of people, but I think it's important because it affects us all. Especially on YouTube, because we see comments from these people. Okay, so they're not suited with the way that the church has been and is led, because there is not that wonderful degree of power exhibited in which they imagine it should be. Oh, you like how right here I'm like, why is it always the same? The strong and mighty. You can tell that my mind was going there. Apostates have asserted that there would not be power in the leaders of the church, which there should be. They have said so during the life of the prophet Joseph, asserting that he was a fallen prophet. And after his death, they made the same statements respecting President Young, his counselors, and the 12 apostles. And if I am not mistaken, there are some members of the church who have appeared to think that there has been some power lacking and have manifested a feeling of restlessness, anticipating the rising of someone who should have greater authority than at present exists. This is talking about the mighty and strong, the Davidic servant. While I would not wish to detract from a reasonable expectation of my brethren and sisters upon this or any other point, my view is that the apostleship, and this is interesting coming on the day that we're going to receive a new prophet and first presidency. Interesting. That the apostleship now held in this church embodies all the authority bestowed by the Lord upon man in the flesh. Yet, I believe that the power of God will be increased among us, that we will have manifestations of his power such as we never have before witnessed. For the day of God's power in the redemption of Zion will come. But I do not expect that to come upon us all of a sudden. I expect that it will be a natural result of the natural growth of the people in the things of God. I expect that we will go on step by step from one degree of knowledge and of power and of faith to another, until we shall be prepared to receive all the Lord has in store for us and be prepared to enter into that glory promised to the faithful saints. The Lord has given his people and to his church every gift and every qualification and every key which is necessary to lead this people into the celestial kingdom of our Father and our God. There is nothing wanting. I could read the rest of this. Again, I'll just post it. You guys can go and read it because, it's 45 minutes in and I get it. I get that your time is valuable. We have been given the gift of revelation, the gift of prophecy, the Holy Ghost to testify of these things of God. Please don't discount it. Do you see what is happening right before our eyes? I pray that we will not miss the majesty of this moment. Keep your eyes open. Don't get sucked in to the idea that everything has to be big and obvious. I actually warn that things probably won't be as big and obvious as we would like. Trust me, I wish and I hope. Might it be obvious? Sure. Doesn't sound like it by this quote from George Q. Cannon, but it might. But it's easier to look for two prophets going to Jerusalem, have a big announcement, and then count down the days. But where would our faith be if that was the case? What about the parable of the 10 virgins? I love you guys. We'll talk soon.